Welcome to Bed Crime Stories podcast. I'm your host, T. If you like all things true crime, if you like it delivered in a peaceful, tranquil manner, if you like it clear and concise without drama, then I highly recommend you subscribe. And if you like what you hear, please smash the like button. It's a free way you can help. And now, without further ado, let's dig in. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Happy Memorial Day. I hope you take some time out today to honor our fallen veterans, anyone and everyone who serves in the military, has served in the military, died while serving in the military. Let's not forget them. It was a busy night on YouTube yesterday. There was a show on the Interview Room with another certified statement analyst, Steve Johnson. He and Chris McDonough analyzed the first interview the Proudfoots did. They are Sebastian's mother and his stepfather with the media 8 days after Sebastian went missing. Also last night, the YouTube channel Queen Bee did another panel, and lo and behold, Chris Proudfoot showed up about an hour into the show, and he shared some interesting information. It was a 4-hour plus show. These shows are really doing me in at night. Oh my God, they're so long. I wish we could just keep them down to an hour. Anywho, I'm going to share first what was said on the Queen Bee channel. There were some good questions asked. One of them was his house and Katie's house thoroughly searched? Chris replied that it's been searched inside and out around 10 times. He also said that his family members' homes have been searched, including his mother's and I think also his sister's. Chris also clarified what was found at that retention pond that is near the Proudfoot home in Hendersonville, Tennessee. He said there was both a footprint as well as a boot print. He could not say if they were right next to each other or if they were in different areas around the retention pond. The footprint was not Sebastian's size, and the boot print was way too big to be Sebastian's. So neither one of those prints belonged to Sebastian. But I'm thinking maybe that boot print could belong to someone associated with this disappearance. Chris didn't say that. I don't know if law enforcement has ruled that out. I'm just saying. Chris did say that a lot of people walk around the retention pond. There are families living in that section. Some of the homes apparently are already constructed, so kids maybe go over there to play. Construction workers are also in the area on a regular basis, and Chris said that he walks over there from time to time to look around. I also saw on another channel whose name escapes me that they took a drive from the Proudfoot home over to the construction area, and they showed that it isn't exactly all that close. Sebastian would have had to go up a big hill, apparently, to get there. It's not right next door. Now, Chris was asked once again about the search canines that were used in the case. He said that a dog named Max is the one that tracked Sebastian's scent down to the retention pond and then jumped in. This isn't new news. We knew this. Chris also verified that the pond was about 2 to 3 feet deep at the time. The pond was drained, nothing was found, and Sebastian's scent apparently stopped at that pond. When asked if he'd been told anything about why it stopped there, Chris said, "Don't know." I have heard that when a scent stops like that, it typically indicates that the missing person may have gotten into a vehicle at that point. Chris also verified that 2 other canines went that same route down to the retention pond, tracking Sebastian's scent there. He said there were also 5 canines total who were inside and around the Proudfoot home on the day Sebastian went missing. One of those 5 dogs tracked Sebastian's scent to the retention pond. I'm not sure if that was Max. It sounds like it might have been. I've had a theory about this for some time, and I think I've mentioned it before, but it is, could someone have taken Sebastian down to that retention pond, put his head under the water long enough, if you know what I mean, and then was there a vehicle that came to whisk him away? It's a clean way to do something like that. There's no fingerprints, there's no blood, there would be no sound of gunfire. We know it was very dark out on the night Sebastian went missing, pitch black. Nobody probably would have heard any sounds going on at that retention pond. That's just me speculating. Chris was also asked if someone came upon Sebastian and he was agitated, what would be one way to calm him down? And Chris said, put him near a cat. Ah, a fellow cat lover. Chris also brought up that story about when he and Katie first started dating and when they got engaged. Because he's allergic to cats, Katie, in order to marry Chris, had to get rid of Sebastian's cats, which she did, and Chris has said that Sebastian has never let him forget it. And I'm telling you that if a man told me how to get rid of my cat in order to marry him, I would have chosen my cat. I would have also offered him the opportunity to take allergy medication. My little soulmate cat Remy and I, we are a package deal. You can't have one without the other. Sorry, not gonna happen. So I have to say I feel very sorry for Sebastian that his beloved cats were taken away from him, and in their place, he got Chris Proudfoot. Moving on to the interview room and the chat with expert statement analyst Steve Johnson. I have to say, what Johnson said lines up perfectly with what another statement analyst said, and that would be Peter Hyatt. 1, Chris and Katie showed signs of deception in that first interview with the media in March, 8 days after Sebastian was reported missing. 2, both Chris and Katie used language, according to Steve Johnson, that was designed to convince us that they are both good parents who loved Sebastian. 3, they mostly talked about themselves, meaning Chris and Katie in the interview, as victims. They mentioned what a roller coaster ride this has been of hopelessness and helplessness. So they were presenting themselves as victims and talking about how they've been affected by Sebastian being gone, but they weren't expressing concern for Sebastian, as in, I'm worried about what's happening to him right now. Is he scared? Is he cold? Is he hungry? Oh my God, I just don't know what's happening to my child at this moment. None of that. We just heard how they were being affected by this situation. That is a red flag, according to Steve Johnson. Steve pointed out that we're not seeing grief in these people's faces or hearts. This points to this not being an accident in my mind. I'm saying that's my opinion. Katie Proudfoot should be grieving, even if it was an accident that she was responsible for. That's why it makes it seem to me like this could have been a planned incident. That's me speculating. That's not from Steve Johnson. But Johnson said that we're not seeing grief and we're not seeing sadness 8 days after Sebastian went missing. He said it's a big disconnect and it's very troubling. Johnson pointed out the statement that Katie made, which was, quote, I don't know why he walked out that door, end quote. She also said her son's not a runner. He's never run away before. And according to Johnson, this makes it look like Katie thinks the only option is that Sebastian ran away. So they already have their narrative, much like Candace Bly and Don Wells did when Summer Wells went missing. In a case like this, you can't know what happened unless you are involved, right? So Chris McDonough then said, DLR does not look right. He said it would make more sense if we had been fighting, but he was behaving. According to Steve Johnson, normally parents say all the good things about their missing child. Katie also said everyone agreed that he was in a good mood that day. To Steve Johnson, this seemed like Katie was trying to prove to us that everything was good, that Sebastian was behaving, and to him that makes it seem like the opposite is probably true, that perhaps Sebastian was not behaving that day, and that could have led to some sort of argument or altercation. And by saying that Sebastian was behaving, it's a subtle reference to Sebastian getting into trouble and them fighting from time to time. So it's a bit of shade. Bottom line, according to Steve Johnson, what happened to Sebastian likely happened at 8 or 10 p.m. It could be that he was forced out the front door because he did not like to walk barefoot, because he was terrified of insects, and he also didn't like getting dirty. Steve Johnson said he would not have walked out that front door willingly. Johnson also felt that the 3-hour phone conversation between Katie and Chris Proudfoot was likely connected to the case and the disappearance, and he posited that perhaps Chris Proudfoot suggested a punishment wherein Sebastian was forced outside into the darkness without shoes on. That is exactly what Peter Hyatt said. So now we have 2 certified statement analysts saying the same thing. And I do believe Chris and Katie Proudfoot were watching the interview room last night as well, because Chris made a comment on Queen Bee's show that he just thought it was all nonsense. He doesn't give any credit to these educated men. By the way, I looked up the temperature in Hendersonville, Tennessee on the night that Sebastian allegedly went missing. The low that night was 30 degrees Fahrenheit, so it was quite chilly outside. And if he was barefoot and only in a long-sleeve black shirt and sweatpants, knowing how thin he is, I think he would have been very cold. Steve Johnson thought perhaps Sebastian going missing could have been down to an ultimatum that Chris Proudfoot gave Katie Proudfoot, and that is, it's either me or Sebastian, you decide. And this would have been the same ultimatum that he gave her when it came to those cats. The reason Steve Johnson felt that whatever happened to Sebastian happened either at 9 p.m. or 10 p.m. is because that is when Katie said that Sebastian told her he loved her. That was a big deal statement for Steve Johnson. He said that parents and children, they always say they love you. So there's no reason to share that with us when you're telling us what happened that night. It's as if Katie is trying to prove that she was a good mother and that Sebastian loved her. And I do recall that Stephen Stearns said something like that about Madeline Soto. He claimed that she said she loved him when he allegedly, which we know he didn't do, dropped her off at school that morning. Johnson also felt that 10 p.m. was important because that's when Katie said that she heard the thud. Johnson said that it's not uncommon for parents who are involved in their child's disappearance to share some shards of truth about what happened, and that thud might be the truth in this case. Johnson felt certain that whatever happened to Sebastian happened Sunday night. Johnson also pointed out what other experts have said, and that is that there is no sense of Katie feeling frantic about Sebastian. And again, the interview that they were looking at was one that Katie and Chris Proudfoot did just 8 days after Sebastian was reported missing. To Johnson, this could indicate that Katie maybe already knows that Sebastian isn't coming back and that he's deceased. Again, allegedly. Remember, law enforcement has said that there are no signs of foul play, and Katie and Chris Proudfoot have not been charged in connection with Sebastian's disappearance. Steve Johnson also felt that it's pretty clear that Chris Proudfoot doesn't love Sebastian, and that's because Chris tried really hard to prove to the audience in that first interview that he loves Sebastian. Johnson brought up the CPS reports. It's impossible to look at Chris Proudfoot and Katie Proudfoot without considering those CPS reports. Steve also wondered if perhaps Katie is a victim of Chris Proudfoot, that she's afraid of Chris Proudfoot, and that she may be a victim of DV, allegedly. Johnson and McDonough also pointed out what a huge red flag it is that Katie and Chris have sort of left the Proudfoot home, that they're not staying in the home that Sebastian would return to if he could return. That's a giant red flag. Johnson said that he's known of families to stay in the same house for 20 years and to even continue speaking about their child in the present tense, even when they finally got word that their child was deceased. They are so in denial of it that they continue to speak of that child in the present tense. I wanted to let you know that I also reached out to Seth Rogers' sister, and she said that she actually hasn't spoken to him for a week or so. She said that she's tired of all the drama, but she did say that one thing she knows for sure is that Sebastian's missing, and the other thing she knows for sure is that her brother is not responsible for it. So I'll leave you with all of this for now. I hope you enjoy your day. I'm going to spend time with my dad, who is a veteran of the Korean War, a Purple Heart recipient, and I'm a very proud little Army brat. See you next time on Bed Crime Stories. I want to thank everybody who sent me PayPal donations for my channel, and also who signed up for Patreon memberships and channel memberships. Thank you from the bottom of my heart.